Sunday. I just got back from the pool with my daughters. I'm actually still wearing my bathing suit and just very fresh face. No makeup. I'm trying to do better at just coming on here fully real without feeling like I have to look a certain way, but I'm not going to put makeup on because I'm going to be cleaning for the rest of today. So why even put makeup on? But I still want to talk about this emotional intelligence thing. Let me first state that I do not believe that it's only men who aren't emotionally intelligent. I just think more men can get by. Men can rise corporate ladders. Men can be married and be happy in their marriage, whether or not their spouse is happy, can be a parent, can be successful in lots of ways without emotional intelligence, whereas the women I know who aren't emotionally intelligent aren't really succeeding. That makes sense. So y'all, let me just give you a few examples because I feel like there's two situations recently with men, but these are just two recent situations, but I feel like it happens so often where I'm noticing, especially with men who are trying to date me. So we're talking about men who are 35, 36, 37 and up, all the way to 50, where in the last, like, I guess maybe 13 or 14 months that I've been dating, like with a purpose, that I've just come across men who don't have emotional intelligence and don't realize it, or maybe they realize it and they don't care. So let me just give you an example. So this one guy, he slides in my DMs, he's trying to talk to me, and you know, it was just a friendly banter, you know, back and forth. Then he mentioned his age, and I was like, you know what? I'm not going there anymore because he's 20, 29, and I'm not going there. And I was like, no, I actually said two things. I said, one, I'm not really very much interested in dating at all. And two, I'm not going there with men in their 20s. Like I did it twice earlier this year with two different guys in their 20s, and it wasn't for me. It wasn't for me, in part because I can't deal with the lack of emotional intelligence. But, you know, let me just preface, as a 47-year-old woman, me dating or giving time or energy to any man in their 20s was literally ridiculous of me, to think that they could be on any sort of emotional level of maturity in any way when they have such less lived life experience just in general. But if they had happened to be women, like, I can see why it works the opposite, because there are some men who are 40 and they're still very immature, and them dating a 20-year-old woman they could be actually on the same level of maturity. But when you're an older woman and you're dating men in their 20s, I don't know about other women who have cougared or who cougar full time. I think it's an arrangement. If it's an older woman and a younger man, I think it's an arrangement of two things. He wants the stable money from the older woman, and the older woman wants the stable, consistent dick from the younger man. I think it's sex and money. But actually an older woman and a younger man connecting on an emotional level, that's funny. So anyway, so I dated one for a week, the younger guy for a week in his mid-20s, and then the other one, for the 28-year-old, for like a month, 6 weeks. And the whole time I was like, can't do this. But anyway, so this recently, last week, I told this guy, I said, no, I can't. I'm not dating anyone this time. And he said, well, what did he do? What happened? Because I told him, like, yeah, I dated a guy for 6 weeks who's 28, and I'm not doing it. He said, what did he do? So I left him three 1-minute voice clips via Instagram Messenger, explaining to him that one of the things that I could not stand was a lack of emotional intelligence about things. It was about how he related. It was about his tone and his posture. It was about me communicating to him very specifically felt needs, and him not being able to respond in a way that was appropriate to what I said. It was about some of his actual just worldviews were inconsistent with my worldviews, which is no knock on him, like, but sometimes there's worldviews which, if they don't mix, I'm just not moving forward with them, because I know from lived experience that, you know, when you have worldviews that don't match on specific areas, sometimes it's really difficult to move forward. Especially, I'll just say this, especially as Black people, because we are two Black people with different worldviews on very specific issues about Black people, that just don't work. So anyway, so So I explained this to this guy and he just came back and said, did you give him a chance though? Did you give him a chance? Like 6 weeks isn't that long. It seems like you didn't even give him a chance. And I was like, you're kidding, right? I didn't say this to him, but I was thinking like, you're kidding. I just left you 3 minutes worth of voice clips explaining to you why it didn't work out. Now you might be like, well, is that a lack of emotional intelligence? Yes, it is. It's also immaturity, because a mature person hears what someone says and says, okay, unless you think I'm lying, I hear you. That's your choice to make. I validate it. I accept this. But he wrote that back. So then I left him another message and said, yes, I gave him a chance. I actually communicated to him what was bothering me specifically. And I asked, is this reasonable? Is it reasonable? You know, like I'm pretty mature when it comes to being able to communicate with men about pretty much anything at this point. He came back and said that he thought I was being too hard on him and all this stuff. And it was so unattractive to me. I'm like, bro, if you had a modicum of emotional intelligence, you would understand how unattractive it is for a woman to tell you something this specifically and you to brush it off, or actually even gaslight me. It wasn't that bad. You gave up on him too quickly. I mean, what in the world? So that was one example. Another one was, what was this? There was another one. I feel like my brain is spinning with all these different random examples. Oh, it's the, I don't know if this is lack of emotional intelligence or if it's just like sometimes not reading the room, but a guy, again, trying to slide in my DMs and me saying, and I actually said what I said the last time, like, hey, I'm not in a place right now where I'm wanting to focus on dating or, you know, give any more energy or energy output. And then someone trying to convince me why I should give energy or output and framing it up differently. And it was that moment that I was like, no, don't do that. You're not thinking or you're not using emotional intelligence. Because I literally said, he asked for my phone number and I was just like, no, I'm not giving you my phone number. Like I guard my energy pretty closely these days. I'm protecting my energy and protecting my heart. I have things to focus on. I am a working single mother of 3 who's healing from some stuff, and I'm in school. I'm getting a master's degree, so I have ish to do. And last thing I want to do, and I didn't tell him this, but last thing I want to do is spend time texting with someone who I don't even actually have any interest in, because he was like, well, maybe if you gave me, you know, all of that stuff. And so so he said, okay, well then I guess we can just banter on Facebook Messenger. And I was thinking, see, this is unattractive to me. This is your lack of emotional intelligence. And some people might be like, oh, that's cute, he's trying. No, it's not cute. If I just said I'm guarding my energy pretty closely, I don't want to banter. I don't know. I guess, I don't know. When I was younger, that kind of thing might not have bothered me. But now I look at dating men who are interested in talking to me or getting to know me or whatever as I would any relationship, anyone who's going to get my time or energy. So like if it's a woman who I meet and I'm straight. So if I meet another straight woman and we are like, oh, we're both moms, we're both divorced, we both have kids, and we're talking and we're like, oh, should we spend more time together? And if I said, you know, oh man, I just don't have a lot of time right now, but maybe we could do like 1 weekend a month. And let's say that woman was like, you know, I just really want to do 2 weekends a month with you though. Like, wouldn't that be so much fun? We could get our kids together. Like, I'm going to think the same thing. Like, you lack some emotional intelligence, or either you're not listening or you're not respecting my boundaries. But I do think that respecting a boundary is part of having emotional intelligence. So when someone says, I don't want to do this, or this is my boundary, or this is the time limit I have, and usually a man tries to push past that, it already shows there's not a lot of respect. So said guy who I'm just talking about, who wants the banter, and I said something like, no, it's not going to be much, you know, just because I wanted to let him know, like, I'm just not interested in this. And then he wrote me back something a little bit later today actually and said, what are your measurements? Do you mind that I ask you that? And I wrote back, I do mind. To be honest with you, I don't know my measurements, but why? Why? And he wrote back, because I just keep looking at all your pictures and my imagination is running wild. That's not a compliment. But read the room. I know it sounds like I'm just talking about men who are interested and I'm not interested. It's more than that, y'all. It's more than that. It's more than that. I think it's me being way more aware now of me trying to communicate something clearly but politely. Because I've never been like, nah, get out my face, nigga. I've never been like that. I've always been very polite, very like upfront with men when I'm interested or not interested. If I'm interested, I'm like, yes, I'm feeling you. I'm really very upfront. so so lately, for me to be more upfront, more honest, more direct, and have somebody trying to push past that. Here's another example. It's not an interest example, but somebody who said, this could be man, woman, anybody. This could, I mean, potential love interest or anybody. This example happens a lot. Oh, what happened with you and your ex? Oh, I was very, very severely narcissistically and verbally abused. This is a conversation I had with a man a couple weeks ago. So I tell him, oh man, that doesn't sound like that bad. Like, what was your role? Sir, first of all, when you're dealing with any sort of abuse victim, it does not matter what kind of abuse. If they say spiritual abuse, or if they just say financial abuse, or physical abuse, or narcissistic abuse, or verbal abuse, it does not matter what kind of abuse. When someone is a victim, there's a power dynamic. There's the power person, and there's a victim. And the victim does not have a role in it other than the role they are playing in the abuse cycles that are, that are turning, but they don't have a role in being abused, in bringing abuse upon themselves. It's kind of like saying to a woman like who got RAPED, it's kind of like saying, well, what were you wearing? Like that, like men are going to RAPE regardless of what someone is wearing. That's what studies show. We could be wearing a trash bag, half naked or fully clothed, and men are going to RAPE. But anyway, it's the same thing with abusers. So that was, to me, like a big raging red flag indicator of someone who lacks the emotional intelligence. Arguably, it could be, okay, they just lack intelligence about abuse survivor dynamics. Okay, let's just say I give him that. Let's just say I give him that little bit. But he went on. So then I was like, well, so I explained just what I explained it to y'all just like go. So, and I said, no, I did not play a role in my abuse. I was trying very hard to be a loving, doting wife, and then he proceeded to abuse, regardless of what I did, regardless. But I was like, but I do find it problematic that you're suggesting that. And he fell back to, well, I just didn't know, I didn't know. But like, was it really bad? Like, he pushed that. This has actually happened to me a couple other times, in a scenario where a guy's trying to talk to me, where I've actually just immediately blocked them. Like, I didn't even finish the conversation because I already know that if there's already something in a man where he's some little red flag or something is triggered in him where he's thinking this woman is telling me a story about a man abusing her, and he's automatically not trusting me or my story or what he's hearing about what I'm sharing, to the point that he would actually come out and ask me, what was your role in being abused? Or was it so bad after I've clearly stated, because I've said this a million times before, I was in a very severely emotionally, verbally, and narcissistically abusive marriage. I was severely traumatized. I was severely trauma bonded. I use the word severely on purpose for someone to understand the depth of what I was going through. And so I have specific issues and specific ways that I'm dealing with my healing, that I've dealt with healing, that I have to continue to deal with because I still have complex PTSD. So I've said this enough times to know, as soon as a man comes back with that, was it so bad question, I'm like, no, this is not just basic understanding. This is you lacking emotional intelligence. And the thing is, y'all, is my bar is so high. It's so high because I have really, really smart, good friends. Like, my good friends are really smart. Like, two of my best friends in the world are both licensed psychotherapists. And, you know, therapists are really smart people, good therapists, you know, they have an MSW for a reason, y'all. They have to learn a lot about, basically about emotional intelligence, but they're both really, really, really intelligent and really thoughtful. And I've been best friends with both of them for like ever. And so, the way that we deal with each other is with very high level of emotional intelligence in terms of thinking through implications of what we say and how we say it and our tone and what the other person could think, and going out of the way to make sure the other person feels comfortable with the boundaries that we're setting, and how we're setting the boundaries, and how we care for each other, and if we're caring for each other well, and how we're following up with each other, and making sure that it's equal energy being given, and apologizing to each other in advance if we don't feel like we're giving equal energy. There's just a great deal of emotional intelligence being communicated in these relationships with my best girlfriends. And I tend to, thank God, I tend to attract the women in my life who have a high level of emotional intelligence. And that's what I give to them, and that's what I expect from them. And if I'm pulling back from a woman, it's usually because I'm feeling it. I'm feeling like their emotional intelligence is not doing what it needs to do for me, and it will trigger like anxious attachment shit in me. And I just don't deal with that with women. Some people have issues with men because of their daddy issues. Some have issues with women because of their mama issues or whatever. But with me, like, I've clearly have daddy issues. My dad was abusive, and I have all of my life very much struggled with boundaries with men, with healthy relationships with men. I've come a long way, but for the majority of my life, I've very much struggled with that dynamic. But with women, all my life, y'all, I've enjoyed really safe, wonderful, really amazing friendships with women. And if a woman presents herself as toxic, I usually just get rid of them quickly. Like, it's like some sort of intolerable thing. But that's thankfully, y'all, thankfully, I'm healing. But that dynamic that I have with women is slowly starting to carry over to men, where I'm starting to expect the same boundaries, expect the same level of emotional intelligence, expect the same thoughtfulness, expect the same emotional intelligence, basically. And so, like, for example, one of the younger guys I dated, it was such a stark contrast to, like, last year I dated a guy who was like 38 for like, I don't know, for like 8 weeks. Not like exclusive committed relationship, but like 8 weeks. And he was really emotionally intelligent, and it just didn't work because he just lived far away, but he was great. Really, really great guy. And so going from that dynamic to this younger guy where, like, he could say something and have, like, I'll give you an example, and have like a tone. And I'm like, why would you say it like that? Like, that was really hurtful. Now, most people with emotional intelligence, if you care about someone, or if you're dating them, especially early stage dating, you're wanting to impress them. You're wanting to show them, like, hey, you know what? Let me hear. I didn't realize I said it like that to you. Let me try to change my tone. Let me try to understand what makes you feel cared for and what doesn't. Like, especially in the beginning of a relationship, in the beginning of a dating situation, most men, I find, want to impress you. And so for him to be like, oh man, you just tripping, I was like, what? It was so weird for me. I was like, oh my God, I haven't even been around anyone this immature in such a long time. It actually feels weird. It actually felt weird for me to communicate my needs. Like, that tone felt really disrespectful. To have him be like, oh man, you're tripping. Which, number one, is gaslighting. It's basically saying, no, that's not how I didn't have a tone. But two, it's not hearing your partner. It's not respecting your partner. It's a setup for contempt, which contempt is like a killer of any relationship, romantic, platonic, mother, daughter, father, son, siblings. Contempt cannot exist. And once contempt enters a situation, it's like there's no coming back from it. There's no recovery. This is not my findings. The reason I was looking around is because I'm like, there's a book about this. I have the book. I forgot what the name of the book is, but it's the guy, I forgot his name. He has the Gottman Institute. He has this big popular institute where he studied like 30,000 couples over the course of his like 50-year career. And he found the 4 things that if a relationship has, if a marriage or a long-term partnership has these 4 things, it will die. So he could predict within an hour of meeting with a couple if they were going to end up divorced. But one of them is contempt. And I have seen that in my life, in my marriages, my marriages and my relationships, all of it. I've seen it. Contempt kills. So he was already producing contempt in me. Yo, we had we had only been dating for like 2 weeks at that time, and I already felt contempt. Because like there was 3 things, there's like 3 interactions like that where I felt like he gaslit me, where I felt like he wasn't listening, or he was pushing back. He was belittling my whole struggle with depression and anxiety, which was also very weird for me because I have not met a walking adult. There is no adult in my life whatsoever who would ever even think in any sort of world, in any way, that it would be okay to try to explain away like severe depression or anxiety. I just can't believe he did that. So I was just often in shock, like, oh my God, what is he saying? He's like literally the reason why I will literally never ever date anyone that much younger than me ever again. Because I was like, what the hell is this? I would never. There's like no other situation in my life where I would ever let someone talk to me like that about, especially about my very personal and deep issues and struggles with anxiety. So it was like no emotional intelligence, but also all this other behavior that was super problematic. But I felt contempt. Like contempt is kind of like this feeling where it's like, I hate you, but I don't even know why, or I don't like you, but I don't know why, or like I feel anger and rage and I can't quite explain it. Yeah, there's more to contempt than just anger or rage or like confusion. It's like a lot of emotions balled up into one, but you can't quite articulate. So yeah, just know that if you're dating anyone and you start feeling contempt, but what I'm finding, and I'm so thankful for this, y'all, like this is really showing me my healing, is that when dudes try to talk to me, and one of my tests that I have stated before on here and other places is I always give a test where I say no to something. No to my phone number, no to can we go out on Tuesday night, no to whatever. Just saying no, period, to see how they respond to not having power. Because usually, and I don't blame women for this, but I do think it's something we need to come out of, because we're so socialized to try to get a man, keep a man, meet man's every needs, etc. Be pleasing to a man, not anger a man. All the things we need to do to survive in this world that we have been taught. It's just very easy for all of that to seep into situations where there should be equal power, like especially relationships, especially in early dating. And so for you to just exert in a small way when you're just getting to know each other, just saying no to see how they respond, so can give a pretty great indicator of what kind of person they are. It can be a really good indicator. So yeah, so I try to say no to something, but I have found that in that saying no process, and in all 3 of these scenarios that I've mentioned where I push back on something, especially where they assume that they're either going to stay in power, remain in power, in a power dynamic, or have their opinion be valued or higher than yours almost because they're so used to it, or there might be other women in their life who have treated them a certain way because of how they look or money or whatever it might be. They're so used to it that how they respond really shows. And I think in these situations, all of them gave me responses that breeded very early on contempt. And instead of me explaining that away, like, oh, I probably misunderstood, or which is what I used to do most of my life. That's why I ended up in an abusive marriage, because I used to explain it away, gaslight myself, like, oh, I'm sure he didn't mean that, and you're reading into it or whatever. Now I listen to myself and listen to my body and listen to my gut. And in those situations, the 3 that I just mentioned, it was like, I feel contempt already. And if I feel contempt within 1 conversation of talking to you, 2 weeks of knowing you, or 1 month, I mean, feeling contempt at all if you think about it, that's a pretty big, heavy emotion. It's not just angry, because humans aren't getting to contempt just because you knocked your your Sprite over. You know, like if I'm on a date and a guy knocks my Sprite over into my dress, let's just say, and it ruins the dress or whatever, I might be angry. Well, I'm the kind of person that would be like, that's no big deal, like it was an accident. But there are women out there who I know would be really legitimately angry. But if the guy was like, hey, I'm so sorry, I'm really sorry, if they were genuinely sorry, or let's say they made up for it, they offered to pay for the dress or for the damages or for the dry cleaning or whatever. But let's just say a guy who's not very emotionally intelligent is like, man, get the fuck over it or something, just like has that response. That's going to produce contempt. I mean, you see the difference? It's a deeper feeling than just anger. You know, it's deeper than that. It takes more layered, nuanced communication to get to contempt. So yeah, and I find that for me, I'm getting to contempt because of a lack of emotional intelligence, because my standard is so high because of enjoying these really amazingly emotionally intelligent relationships with my best girlies. And my standard is just high. So I'm like, please come at me with emotional intelligence or just leave me alone, because I'm just going to be sitting there thinking about how dumb you are. I feel bad saying that because I'm not saying that from a judgmental place, but I think I'm just saying, like, I think it's not just me. I think there's a lot of women out there who aren't articulating it quite like this, but we're just so disappointed every time we try to date men, especially older ones, because you think that they will have it more together, or like that they'll and by older I mean 35 and up, just 35 and up, like you a grown a man. Okay, I mean, I know that men are grown a men before that, but like 35 and up basically is the range that I'm in at my age. At 47, even 35 to 40 is at this point I think still too young for me. I still think I need my limit to be like 41, but sometimes I dip lower because well, they're still very attractive to me, more than like older men, like 55-ish. But the ones who are younger tend to be the ones who are like really, really coming after me. Hey, how are you? So you would expect men 35 and up to have more emotional intelligence than they have. And sometimes, like when I have interacted with men just on dating apps and they, you know, they're saying they're divorced, and I usually always ask this question because I think it is a great question if you're trying to figure out where a man is at, if he's emotionally intelligent or if he's mature. Even if he's 47 years old or 50 years old, he could still be very immature. If you ask what led to your divorce, or how have you healed from your divorce, it's very easy to tell very quickly the men who are still immature and have no emotional intelligence, because they're like, oh, it was whatever, you know, we just didn't get along or whatever, you know, I've kind of been dealing with it or whatever. And right there, I'm like, I'm done. Because if you ask me, if a man asks me, why did you get divorced? Why have you been divorced twice? What happened? I'm going to give you a full list. In the first marriage, I'm not going to say the list now. This happened, A, B, C, and D. Here's how I contributed, A, B, C, and D. Here's how I've sought healing to heal from A, B, C, and D. I went into a second marriage knowing about A, B, C, and D, and had these specific issues, got abused, got traumatized, and still dealt with these issues and then the additional issues that got brought up. And I escaped that marriage, thank God. And here's how I've continued to try to heal since then. And here's what my healing journey has looked like. And here's the patterns I'm still dealing with. I'm going to give somebody a thorough answer if I trust them. So if a man cannot give me a why did y'all get divorced and what you learned and what led to it, I'm not going to engage with you. I'm not, because I know that men can make it be very successful in this world with the minutest amount of maturity and emotional intelligence, but they are shitty partners and shitty husbands if they don't have it. They could even be good dads, sort of good dads without that. But they can be great at their career without emotional intelligence. Rise through the company. But what you're not gonna do, you're not gonna know how to love and care for a woman who's already intelligent, who's already on her healing path, who's already been in therapy for 20 years. And I'm not saying that like I'm a better than, I'm saying it like I'm farther along on this journey, and the last thing I'm gonna do is throw a rope out to somebody 20 feet back and drag them while I'm still trying to heal from my journey too. So yeah, this is what I've been thinking about emotional intelligence, just because of these random DMs I've been getting lately and how disappointed I feel in them. I'm like, y'all are just, why are you even in my DMs? Why are you even in here? Knowing you're not bringing your best self, knowing you looking at a woman. If you look at anything I have online, anything, my YouTube, my TikTok, my Instagram, my book, anything I've done online, that I'm a thoughtful, intelligent woman. And I would want that back. I want that back. I want as much thoughtfulness and intelligence back as I'm giving out. So don't disturb my peace. That's kind of the thought I've been having lately is, man, if you're not ready to love a woman where she's at, don't disturb her peace. You're grateful. It's good being transparent. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, it is good to be transparent. I'm trying to be transparent on here that I expect more. I expect more, and my standards are high. And I'm really very, 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 honest to goodness, very grateful to be saying that to y'all, because it's not, like I said before, this has not always been the case for me. And now I am really leaning into expecting more from, at least at minimum, from a man who I'm going to date, even if it's just friends with benefits. I want more. I want emotional intelligence. I'm not dealing with the immaturity or making excuses anymore. I think a lot of women are reaching this place because it's like we don't need y'all to live and survive, so it's just better to live at peace and be alone than to deal with some of this stuff. You respect me for having therapy. Thank you. Yeah, I have years of therapy, and I respect men who go to therapy too. I actually find it incredibly sexy. Anyway, all right, it's been a half an hour, so I should go. Thanks for listening to this, my TED Talk about emotional intelligence and my frustrations about it. So anyway, hope you have a good night.